Welcome back to the final episode of our calendar series. I'm Luna with the International School of Forecasting. Over the past 4 episodes, we've covered the fundamental problem of timekeeping, the evolution of the Roman and Gregorian calendars, the mathematical problems with 13-month calendar claims, and the reality of health and biological connections to lunar cycles. Now we need to address the big picture question. Why does the entire world use the Gregorian calendar? Was it because it's the best possible calendar? Because it's astronomically superior? Or is something else going on? And more importantly, what should we actually do with all this information? Let's be absolutely clear about this. The Gregorian calendar is not the global standard because it's the most astronomically accurate, or because it's the most natural, or because it represents cosmic truth. The Gregorian calendar is the global standard because of colonial power, international trade, and technological lock-in effects. Here's the timeline of adoption. 1582, Pope Gregory XIII introduces the Reformed calendar. Catholic countries adopt it immediately: Italy, Spain, Portugal, Poland, most of France. 1600s to 1700s, Protestant countries resist on principle. They don't want to follow a papal decree. They maintain the Julian calendar. 1752, Britain switches to the Gregorian calendar. This is the major turning point. When Britain adopts it, the entire British Empire follows. America, India, Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, much of Africa, and dozens of other colonies and territories. 1873, Japan adopts it during the Meiji Restoration as part of modernization efforts. 1911, China adopts it during the Republican Revolution. 1918, the Soviet Union adopts it for administrative standardization, despite being officially atheist and having no religious reason to follow a papal calendar. And 1940s, Eastern Orthodox countries finally adopt it, among the last holdouts. When Britain adopted the Gregorian calendar in 1752, 170 years after the Pope introduced it, the effect was global. The British Empire at that time spanned continents. Trade routes connected Britain to virtually every region of the world. International trade requires standardized dates. Contracts need to specify delivery dates. Ships need to coordinate arrival times. Financial instruments need to mature on specific dates. Legal systems need to process cases on scheduled dates. If Britain is using one calendar and Spain is using another, every international transaction requires conversion and creates opportunities for confusion and disputes. Once the British Empire standardized on the Gregorian calendar, the network effect kicked in. Every country that traded with Britain had a strong incentive to use the same calendar. Every country that wanted to participate in international commerce needed to coordinate dates. By the 20th century, the cost of using a different calendar became prohibitively high. Even countries that had never been colonized found it economically necessary to adopt the Gregorian calendar for international purposes. This isn't because the Gregorian calendar is superior. It's because everyone else was already using it. Imagine an alternate history where Islamic empires colonized Europe instead of Europeans colonizing much of the world. Imagine that the centers of trade and power in the 15th through 19th centuries were based in Baghdad, Cairo, and Istanbul, rather than London, Paris, and Madrid. In that alternate history, the entire world would probably be using the Islamic lunar calendar today. The year 2025 CE would be year 1447 AH. Ramadan would be the most important date on the global calendar. Businesses and governments worldwide would coordinate their activities around Islamic timekeeping. Would that calendar be better? No. It's a lunar calendar with 354 days per year, so it drifts through the solar seasons. Spring arrives on different calendar dates each year. It's actually less aligned with agricultural cycles than the Gregorian calendar. But would it work for global commerce? Absolutely. With appropriate adjustments for the solar year discrepancy, it would function just fine. The calendar you use is an accidental history, not a reflection of astronomical truth or cosmic alignment. It's a function of which civilizations held power during the critical period when global trade and communication networks were being established. Okay, So the Gregorian calendar won because of historical accident and power dynamics. But does it actually work well for its intended purpose?
Yes, it does several things very effectively. Tracks solar seasons accurately. The average year length of 365.2425 days matches the actual solar year of 365.2422 days. The error is only 0.0003 days per year, 1 day of drift every 3,333 years. This is precise enough for any practical purpose. Seasons remain locked to specific dates. Spring always begins around March 20th, summer around June 20th, fall around September 22nd, winter around December 21st. Simple and predictable rules. The leap year rule is complex enough to be accurate, but simple enough for anyone to calculate. Divisible by 4, except divisible by 100, except divisible by 400. You don't need special astronomical knowledge or intercalation councils to determine whether a year is a leap year. You just need basic arithmetic. Optimized for agriculture. Because seasons stay locked to specific date ranges, farmers can plan planting and harvesting schedules years in advance. This was enormously important for civilization. Reliable food production depends on reliable seasonal timing. Honest about its compromises. The Gregorian calendar doesn't claim to track the moon. It doesn't pretend to align with lunar phases. It makes one clear choice: optimize for solar seasons and accept that lunar cycles won't align with calendar months. This is an honest compromise. The Gregorian calendar sacrifices lunar tracking. Moon phases don't align with calendar months. The new moon might occur on the 3rd one month and the 28th another month. There's no consistent relationship. For cultures and religions that mark time by lunar phases, this creates a problem. They need to maintain separate lunar calendars alongside the civil solar calendar. The Hebrew calendar adds a 13th month in 7 out of every 19 years to keep lunar months aligned with solar seasons. Jewish holidays like Passover and Yom Kippur fall on different Gregorian dates each year, but remain aligned with their lunar calendar positions. The Islamic calendar is purely lunar and doesn't attempt to align with solar seasons at all. Ramadan moves through the solar year, occurring in different seasons over a 33-year cycle. The Chinese calendar maintains both solar terms and lunar months, adding intercalary months as needed. These aren't competing calendars. They serve different purposes. The Gregorian calendar serves civil and commercial purposes. Traditional calendars serve cultural, religious, and spiritual purposes. Let's revisit something we touched on in episode 1. The vernal equinox occurs around March 20th or 21st every year. This is when day and night are equal length, when the sun crosses the celestial equator moving northward, when spring begins in the northern hemisphere. In tropical astrology, this is 0 degrees Aries, the beginning of the zodiac cycle, the astronomical new year. This isn't arbitrary. It's based on observable celestial mechanics. It happens every year. You can measure it. You can predict it. Compare this to January 1st. Why is January 1st the new year? Because Julius Caesar said so, and later leaders maintained that decision for political and administrative reasons? There's no astronomical event on January 1st. It's completely arbitrary. From an astronomical and astrological perspective, the new year should be March 20th or 21st. This is when the cycle genuinely resets. The Romans understood this. That's why they originally started their calendar in March. Only later, for political convenience, was the start moved to January. Many traditional wisdom systems still recognize March 20th as the true New Year. The Persian New Year, Nowruz, falls on the vernal equinox. The astrological New Year begins when the sun enters Aries. The Gregorian calendar's placement of the New Year on January 1st is purely administrative. It doesn't reflect cosmic truth. It reflects historical political decisions. Here's the key insight. You don't have to choose one calendar and reject all others. You can use multiple calendar systems simultaneously, each for different purposes. Use the Gregorian calendar for civil and commercial purposes. This is what society has agreed upon. This is what coordinates international activity. This is what your employer uses for paychecks and your government uses for taxes. Use traditional cultural calendars for religious and spiritual observances. If you're Jewish, track the Hebrew calendar for holidays. If you're Muslim, track the Islamic calendar for Ramadan. If you're Chinese, track the Lunar New Year. These calendars aren't competing to the Gregorian calendar. They serve different functions. Use astronomical observations to connect with natural cycles. Track the actual moon phases. Look at the night sky. Track when the new moon occurs. Notice when the full moon happens. Pay attention to how you feel during different moon phases. This direct observation is more valuable than any calendar system. Mark the solstices and equinoxes. These are genuine celestial events. March 2021, June 2021, September 22nd, 23rd, December 21st, 22nd. These mark the actual seasonal transitions. Create rituals or practices around them if that feels meaningful. Recognize that December is the 10th month from March. When you hear September, remember it means 7. When you hear October, remember it means 8. This connects you to the older Roman understanding of time. Use the Gregorian calendar for what it's designed for, coordinating with society. Don't resist it. Don't claim it's oppressive. It's just a tool. Honor traditional calendars that matter to your culture or spiritual practice. If you're part of a tradition that uses a different timekeeping system, maintain it alongside the civil calendar. These aren't contradictory. They're complementary. Don't fall for conspiracy claims. When someone tells you that a calendar system was suppressed to control you or disconnect you from cosmic truth, ask for evidence. Usually there isn't any. These claims benefit content creators, not you. The real mastery comes from understanding multiple calendars, multiple cycles, multiple frames of reference simultaneously. You can know that today is October 30th, 2025 on the Gregorian calendar. You can also know that the sun is currently in Scorpio in the astrological calendar. You can check that the moon is waxing gibbous, approaching full. You can recognize that we're between the autumn equinox and winter solstice. These are all true. None of them contradict each other. They're different ways of marking the same moment. This is how the ancients understood time. Not as a single linear track, but as multiple overlapping cycles, each revealing different patterns and meanings.